Welcome to the Trailer Island podcast. It's another Wednesday, another episode. Episode 3 this week. We haven't killed each other.
Not yet. No, we're going strong.
But soon.
Oh, so very soon. I'm joined by...
Steve.
And Matthew.
I love this song.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Matthew, didn't you make this song?
Well, it's funny you say that, Alex, because I did, yes. It was my little contribution there.
If people want to find you on the internet, do you have an Instagram or...
I have no internet presence whatsoever. Do not try and find me.
Might just post photos of you on a private account or something.
Oh, no.
Again?
Oh. Well, last week we talked about a TV show, and this week I guess we've got another film to talk about because we're on Trailer Island. We are comparing films to their trailers. Did the film live up to what the trailer promised? Matthew, would you like to introduce this one?
Yeah, this is a Netflix film, a Netflix original film called Marriage Story.
Yeah,
starring Adam Driver, not Anthony, Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson.
Is Anthony his older brother?
I guess, I don't know where I got Anthony from. I think of Anthony Hopkins for
I knew it.
Anthony Hopkins is not in this film, but my mind went there for some reason.
There were, I think, 3 trailers to this. One trailer was a real mix-up of, I guess, the other 2 trailers, which are themed in a way. They are each of our main characters different perspectives on one another.
Yeah.
So they provide both a narrative of how they feel about the other person, and that gives sort of what this story is kind of about. I will play a bit from the trailer, and it's about the only 10 seconds of the trailer we can use that doesn't have music. So here we go. Here's a trailer from Marriage Story.
I thought we should talk.
Okay. I don't know how to start.
I think that actually sums up this film quite well, which is just that really naturalistic acting, like the long pauses, the naturalistic acting style, which is really effective because it's you're not used to it. You're used to everything being, snappy.
That's a lot of dead air in a trailer as well.
It is, yeah. Because
time is money, but that, I mean, it does sort of reflect what we got as a film.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't want to jump into the film too early, but I don't think that trailer sells how intense that film can actually be.
I only watched it today because I was lazy. I've been very busy drawing sandcastles on the beach. I came out of this really tired.
Oh, really?
I was just like, oh, man, this is so heavy.
It is one of those films where it's a cliche to use, but I think in this case it really applies to it. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
In a very good way. It is just draining because regardless of what character you're rooting for, like there are definitely different perspectives, as I'm sure we'll discuss as the film goes on. But regardless of whose side you're on, you just get like sort of thrown about by this film. You go, oh, what's going to happen next? I was on the edge of my seat, and I agree. Like I was tired by the end of it.
I think that's a positive for the trailer. The trailer doesn't really paint either of these two people as the villain. It really does a good job of explaining that this is just a simple story about 2 people going through divorce.
Yeah.
One's not in the wrong, one's not in the right, or rather, they're both in the wrong and they're both in the right as well. I thought the trailer did a really wonderful job of explaining that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think furthering on to that point, because I was watching, because when I saw the first trailer, it was on Netflix, and the first trailer I saw was just the sort of, I'm going to call it the main trailer, but it was sort of the 2 his and her trailers cut together. And that was the only trailer I saw. I only found out the other day that there were actually 2 others from 2 different points of view, which I thought was really interesting. I'm personally kind of glad that I saw that main trailer first, because to me it suggested a level of unbiased perspective.
Yeah.
And I saw this trailer thinking, this film's going to sort of present these characters and allow you to make up your own mind. And I think that was good that the trailer then didn't go on to sort of show you what the film actually does. And the film does end up skewering, I think, your point of view somewhat on certain characters. It does sort of lean you towards taking a side on one person. But I think the trailer did a good job of just setting you up going, here are these characters, and you're not sure how you're going to feel about it. Sort of just come in and make up your own mind. I thought that was the biggest selling point from the trailer for me.
I think it's quite crucial when you've got a character drama like this as well that you don't provide a trailer with a villain. I think if you're going to make a character drama like this, you really need to sell the fact that it is characters against circumstances they're not real familiar with, and that doesn't need to be a villain in the film whatsoever.
No, because in real life, there's no good or bad in sort of this situation in terms of this kind of marriage story that's presented here. There's no one that's going to turn around and have some kind of overarching plan or anything like that. You know, they're just trying to get through it and be happy. That's their goal, really, is just to have a nice life. And it sort of goes a bit wrong for them, you know.
It's draining.
Yeah.
I personally, watching it as a film, I watched it with my wife today, and, you know, we're a married couple, and it was just like, this is heavy.
Yeah.
If anything, it sort of makes you go, well, I never want to go through that.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, really, because watching it as a single person, like sort of in like a black humor kind of way, it's like, oh, this is why I'm still single. You know, I don't have to go through any of this kind of navigation of another person's feelings to this degree. I don't have to put up with that. I can't speak to its ability to portray a relationship sort of in terms of marriage because I'm not married. I've also not divorced either, so I can't talk to either of those things. But as far as I can tell, it was a fairly measured approach to it. I think it didn't really get melodramatic.
I think it maintained a level of intensity where you weren't given the opportunity to relax. I think maybe at the start, I was quite surprised how quickly they just jumped into the divorce story.
Yeah.
They didn't dick around with, oh, we're going to try and make things better, which is very cliche in so many films, is, they're going through so much, but look at the noble thing that the other character has done to make the other person forget all the bad things that have happened. In this case, they're sticking it out. They're going, okay, we're going to try and be amicable about this. But the drama is that as much as they try and let it be amicable with each other about it, that goes off the rails as well.
I think part of that drama is the fact that Adam Driver's character, I think there is this like underlying sort of expectation from him that, she'll probably come back to me. We'll probably get back together.
Yeah, he's definitely... And it's funny you mention it, because I think also on her behalf, Scarlett Johansson's character, who's called... we should use character names just apart from the actors, but Nicole Barber and then Charlie Barber, who's Adam Driver's character, or Anthony Driver, as I'm now going to call him. Nicole Barber, I got from her character and the way she was written that for the most part, she was very much on the fence, like, you know, when she's going to serve him his notice and all that. She was sort of like, I don't really know. And it just kind of happens. And he goes, all right, I'll have to go along with it now. And then Nora, played by Laura Dern, her lawyer, sort of really pushes Nicole to sort of go. She's sort of dragging her heels a bit. Like, she doesn't really ever want to go as far as she actually goes. She's just sort of quite reluctant. And I think that sort of balances out to what you're pointing out with Charlie, the character, how he's sort of going, if I just kind of wait and be good, I'm sure this will sort itself out, kind of thing. Like, he's also very reluctant to initially... He doesn't want to get a lawyer until I think Laura Dern's character actually calls him and says, hey, this is happening, you need to get a lawyer. Yeah. Legally speaking, you have to have one.
And there are three supporting characters in this film that actually really sort of bring out how devastating a divorce can be. And Laura Dern's character, for starters, Nora Fanshawe, is the first one that sort of... Like, she pushes for this divorce, and I think that's the first great perspective. And then you've got Charlie's first lawyer, Bert Spitz, played by the brilliant Alan Alda, who takes a measured approach to the divorce. He also treats it, as Charlie does, as this thing that needs to be treated with respect. The other person needs to be treated with respect, with care. This is like a divorce is a terrible time. Finally, you got Ray Liotta's character, which was
the first lawyer that he visits.
Yeah, he's an attack dog.
I would describe both of them as probably the only actually bad characters in terms of being bad people in the film. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're also both lawyers. Both of those are very much just out for blood, and it's not even personal to them. And I think those two are like if you want to say the villains, I guess it would actually be them more than anything else.
Yeah,
they're certainly just doing their jobs, though, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're doing their jobs. They want to get their clients the best that they can get them.
And that's why it's so morally ambiguous as well. It's like, well, actually, they're just doing what they're being paid to do.
What they're being told to do.
Yeah.
Well, if you treat Nicole and Charlie as both separate protagonists in their own stories, then definitely both of those lawyers are definitely the villains to their protagonists.
And I think that's why it works that they did those two trailers, sort of a his and her trailer, because like you say, they are essentially both the protagonists. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think the film is brilliant, and it offers you the ability, at least for the first 3 quarters, to actually pick whose side you're on, even if there is a side. I mean, I think it's a lot more complex than just going, they're right or they're wrong. And I don't know I think I was actually disappointed that in the end it did pick a side. I thought it would have been good if it just sort of presented these two characters just going through their own conflicts. But towards the end, it definitely does side with Charlie. Towards the end, at least in my opinion, it does. And Scarlett Johansson kind of takes a back seat.
Really?
She's. Are we going to spoil this here?
No, no. Don't spoil
I won't
anything.
spoil
But
it.
I just find the interpretation interesting that you think that he won.
I found at the end that the film was telling me to take pity on Charlie more than I keep forgetting her name, Nicole. So take pity on him, and Nicole. It sort of said. You don't have to feel as sorry for her in a way. At least that was my interpretation.
That's I do agree with that to some extent. I think the movie's a really, really strong point. Maybe for the first 2/3 of the film is perspective, is actually giving you a reason to root for Nicole and a reason to root for Charlie as well. I do agree with what you're saying there. In the last maybe third, it's really Charlie's story that sort of picks up. We do get Nicole sort of not sidelined, but Charlie definitely is the focus.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps that there's that time jump as well, which serves the plot very well. There's that year time jump at the end, and I think Nicole gets lost leading up to that, and then after the time jump, suddenly they're back together, and maybe that was intentional. Maybe there was to show the passage of time more effectively, perhaps, because you've been with these two characters pretty much constantly for the rest of the film, and I didn't realize how long it was. It's about two.
It's 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's a fairly long film for a drama.
When I loaded it today, I audibly went, at 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was just like, oh man, that's a long film. And especially when you get that emotional charge from the very start, I was just like, oh man, this is going to take a while. But it was engaging.
And that's another thing as well. And it carried through from the trailer, because I was on Netflix again, the trailer came up, and I'd already been told about it by someone, and I watched the trailer and thought, that does look quite good, and watched the film immediately afterwards. And I found that the tone and the sort of energy that trailer set up just carried on perfectly into the film. And I think it's rare that you can watch a trailer and think that it almost is like a introduction, which is what it kind of should be, to the film. And you can watch that right before. It doesn't give anything away. And you can just go straight into the film and think, oh yeah, I know where I am. I know what this is going to be. And then obviously it develops as it should later on. I did find it interesting that the very beginning of the film is structured pretty much exactly the same as that trailer, which is you have narration, the sort of what we like kind of thing, obviously in a slightly different context. And then in sort of the same way, it cuts it down and goes, and now there's a silence, which is when she decides she doesn't want to read out her letter, and that's when it sort of takes a turn.
You get those character monologues at the very start that sort of give an introduction, and it's almost quite positive in a way.
It is. It starts off in a positive way.
They talk about the things that annoy them about each other, and I could certainly relate to that because there are lots of things that I know that piss off my partner, but you get past those.
It makes you like them immediately, both of them.
Yeah,
It brings you on side.
It makes you go, okay, hang on, who am I actually going to cheer for here? As the story evolves, you sort of understand why she is the one who's made the decision to get divorced. Initially, I was like, okay, I can understand her reasons, but it's not quite there. But then it sort of, they really get stuck into it, and those emotions come out about how she genuinely feels, and you see that he still doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he learns anything from this.
Oh, well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think this feeds into. I wanted to talk about theme for this film, because obviously it's a drama and it's clearly got something to say. And when I first saw it, I did find the ending, and I'll try not to give too much away, but I did find the ending a little vague the first time round, until I sort of watched it the second time and realized, well, this film isn't exactly about marriage per se, but it's actually about compromise, and it can be applied to any relationship. It doesn't have to be marriage. Just marriage is the best example for it. But the idea is learning to compromise, because both these characters are quite stubborn the whole way through in various degrees, and it's not until the end, and it's hard to talk about without spoiling it, because I don't want to, because I think if someone hasn't seen this and listens to this and wants to go and see it, I would recommend it, because I thought it was great. But it's not until the end that you sort of see this sort of compromise, but in a very unexpected way. I think it doesn't have a cliche ending, which I thought was really good the second time round. I thought, actually, that's very satisfying that they haven't done, they all live happily ever after ending, which you could imagine which would kind of ruin it, really. It would be a bit of a cheat ending to do that.
I think that sort of speaks to sort of Noah Baumbach, who is the director of the film.
And writer. He also wrote it.
Yeah, he also wrote it as well. I think that just speaks to the quality of his writing, and I mean, just reading here that it was not word for word a true telling of his own life, but it was inspired by some of the events of his life as well.
Okay.
He went through a pretty, I wouldn't say bitter divorce. He went through a divorce a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he's really drawn from that.
It would help to explain why it does feel so real, and that's also a testament to the actors as well, obviously. But I think the writing is superb. There's the argument scene, which is, I think, probably the highlight.
Oh yeah,
For everyone who's seen this film, is this? It's probably halfway through, or just over halfway through.
Just after halfway.
And it's just incredible. Like, the performances and the writing is just fantastic.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think probably if I was going to pick a favorite out of ScarJo and Adam Driver, I'd probably go ScarJo. I just think she just conveys so much with her performance.
She does.
There's a part at the start of the film where they're talking to the therapist, the couple's therapist, and he's asking them to read out a list of things they like and hate about each other, and Scarlett refuses to do it. And I love that scene. I love that little bit of acting there. It's so loaded. It's so...
And it's fun. And this is where I sort of alienate anyone else who really likes Scarlett Johansson. But this is the first film I've seen with her in where I legitimately really enjoyed her performance. And that may be because some of the other films I've seen her in haven't given her the material to actually do that. And this is, obviously a very good script. But I have to agree, I was very, very impressed by what she did. And I just thought, well, why doesn't she do more stuff like this?
Yeah.
Get her agent to get her more parts like this, because she was brilliant in it. It was fantastic.
Well, I can't wait to see Adam Driver in another sort of character-driven film as well. He released a film last year called The Report, I think. I'm really
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
I'm really eager to sit down and watch that. I reckon that'll be a great little Adam Driver performance. And I mean, he was the highlight of the sequel trilogy, wasn't
Oh,
he?
absolutely, especially Last Jedi. It's funny, we mentioned it just before we started recording this, that he leaves Star Wars and then he does this film, and there are quite a few scenes where he's getting compared to his father, and it was just, I think, hard for us being Star Wars fans initially to accept him not being Kylo Ren, because we've seen him in that role featured so heavily. Like, you see all the posters and that, he's everywhere. So I think it was at first, for me, some of those scenes came off as funnier than they should have been, because I had that meta background sort of conversation going on in my head, and it wasn't until the second time I was like, okay, he's not Kylo Ren anymore, okay, he's Charlie Borman, let's just separate them. And yeah, but I did find it funny that was going through my head. And to his acting ability, he isn't actually at all like Kylo Ren, obviously, in this film at all. And the other film I've seen him in was Logan Lucky with the
Oh yeah,
comedy.
of course.
And
I'd forgotten about that.
he's completely different in that as well. Like, but in a very subtle way. So I think he's got a lot of very good depth.
Only other real film I've seen Adam Driver in is probably Black Klansman, and he's not given a lot to do in that film.
When we were watching this today, we had sort of this moment where we had to stop the film because we had to do something else for a moment. We had some people over. My wife sort of looked at me and just sort of said, I don't know if I want to keep watching.
Yeah.
Like, I really think if you have experienced this before, this is a real trigger film.
Oh, I would imagine
it is so raw with everything that it gives you. The conversations are not heavily... I mean, obviously it's scripted, but it's not doctored in a way that... or cut to make it appear fast, or it's allowed to breathe. It doesn't cram information down
and
your
it's
throat.
definitely the same with the cinematography as well, because a lot of it's just shot in houses.
Yeah.
It's set, they're normal people in normal houses, and so a lot of it's done not so much all in wide shots, but there are definitely very sort of, there's space around these people, so you can just sort of see that they're in a normal place kind of thing, and that adds to it, I think.
And a lot of movement is done, with keeping characters in shot, is done with pans, or they let it move. They move with the person rather than cutting in conversation. And I don't know from a technical perspective what that really achieves. Maybe it keeps you in the scene a bit. Sort of, it gives you a understanding of space and where you are. Okay, they're just normal people in normal houses experiencing what happens to a lot of people.
It makes you feel like you're a fly on the wall.
It really does. But I think another thing that it does really well is there are moments in this film which are obviously, scripted to be peaks in a scene. And one of the really obvious ones is when Adam Driver accidentally cuts himself in the middle of this
Such a-
health child worker. I'm not sure what a title would be, coming around to evaluate how good of
Yeah.
a father he is. Suddenly it's played for comedy.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, that wouldn't happen in real life. But because the film's spent the last 2 hours training you to ground yourself, you go, that could easily have happened. And, his performance, the way he tries to cover it up and he just sort of shows her the door and she goes, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's
And
actually
he's
the
trying
Band-Aid.
to open the door for her, and
Yeah,
they're getting
that's-
blood all over the door.
That's
and
right.
Just like, oh my
But
gosh.
it's one of those things that, ordinarily you'd look at it and it'd be hilarious. And it is kind of funny if it wasn't for the fact that
Yeah.
it's trained you in this stress
Yeah.
of that scene, which goes on for a fair while.
I didn't.
And I was just going, oh God, what is he going to
Yeah,
die?
yeah.
Is she going to? But even worse is like, is he going to survive? But he can't see his son anymore. Like you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that scene was just incredible.
Because of course it goes from that scene and it goes to in a 1 year's time.
That's right, you don't know
Immediately
what's
after.
happened to him. You've
and
no
you don't
idea.
see him straight away. So you like, has he just
Yeah.
died?
And
Which would have been a real cop out.
it would have been. But funnily enough, I was like, actually, I could believe that the film would, bring me all this way and then just kill him. It kind of felt like.
Any other film, they would have killed him.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think in a stereotypical Hollywood drama,
Yeah. Even if we wanted to be one of those those indie cinema sort of gritty, dark, or like some foreign film, I think they would have killed him off. But it's
Some
just,
foreign film.
It's just this. It's a
it's a
ground.
trope of foreign film.
I mean, we're in Australia, so I mean, Hollywood, they're all foreign films to us.
Exactly.
But,
But it's just this grounded character drama, and so when they decide they're going to cut the main character's arm open, they just go, "Oh,
and
let's
quite-
go with it."
Yeah, it's quite a gash as
Yeah.
well.
And
Like,
he uses like 2 band-aids to try and fix it. I
And
was
that's
like,
the thing, like, because obviously seeing Logan Lucky, he's obviously got comedic chops, but his timing with that, you just didn't know what to feel with. Like, this is, this is hilarious. At the same time, it's awful. I don't want something bad to happen. You legitimately care for these characters. The film does a great job of making you care.
that scene really speaks to his character as well. Because you think about it, the reason why, one of the main reasons they got divorced is that he devotes so much of his time and passion to the theatre that he half-asses everything else in his life. And if that means being in a relationship is half-assed, if it means trying to fix the open wound in his hand, which he uses less than half the amount of band-aids required, really sort of shows you this guy.
Yeah, he can't even learn what side the cupboard's open, which is, again, it's played for laughs. And so talking of that tone, I think we should actually mention Randy Newman doing the music.
Randy Newman do the music.
Randy Newman did
I only realised in the credits that it was him.
Now, the great Randy Newman, and people don't know who Randy Newman is, he originally started doing like a satirical rock and roll career in the 70s, 80s, and you should check that out because the satire is still relevant today, scarily enough. But then he went on to do Pixar films and soundtracks, and he did Toy Story, he did that was Thomas Newman. He
did Bugs Life as well.
Definitely did Bugs Life, and he's done a few others. But the reason I really want to bring up Randy Newman and why I think he was such a great choice for this film is that he scored it as a Pixar film. So, as you know, we've all grown up with the Pixar films with the Toy Story soundtrack, and I thought it kind of brings you up at the beginning when they're talking about all those lovely things they like about each other with the Randy Newman soundtrack, You've Got a Friend in Me, and then the film to me and the music just goes this death of innocence.
I did find this really odd juxtaposition of the story and the music, and I didn't realise it was Randy Newman until the credits. But I did get this sense of positivity at the start, like imposed positivity that, hey, everything's going to be okay. And then it sort of goes, no, it's not.
I think this would probably be one of those few films for me where I really didn't care about any of the technical aspects. I knew they were there. I knew they were probably done really well. But I mean, I was completely invested in what was going on.
There's no doubt it's shot incredibly well and cut incredibly well. But like you say, I didn't notice it either. I got to the end of it and went, I think it's because the performances are so driven and so convincing. You can't see anything else. You're so glued to the screen for them, and it gets uncomfortable, obviously. But you're for the most part glued to that screen and can't wait to see what happens to them. But it does such a good job in the first 10 minutes of making you care a lot for the both of them that you sort of follow them almost anywhere, and that's why I think it's able to go for 2 hours 15 minutes because you actually care. You want to find out what happens to them.
The film does a good job of capturing life, of a particularly dramatic thing that can happen in life, but very grounded in reality.
And I think there's something to take away from it. I think, well, for me personally, you're obviously, anyone's welcome to disagree. It's all subjective. But I think it was, for these two characters, learning the importance of not having everything your own way. Obviously, when you watch the film, you see that there's conflict there from, Nicole's character and sort of how she feels her life is going, and then Charlie's character, and sort of, they meet in the middle, they go to rudder. But I think ultimately that's what the film is about for me, is this idea of, if you can't be one side of the coin, you have to be in the middle, and you have to meet people in the middle and have these compromises in decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would go a step further with that. I think the film is probably about change and just accepting that change is not how it's portrayed in the movies. Sometimes there is change that you, like Nicole and Charlie, you just need to deal with. You just need to live with. Charlie might not want to have to move to LA, but if he wants to see his son and his ex-wife, that's what he's got to do.
Actually, it's funny because that's when I spoke about the ending before and how it's a sort of very, what's the word, unexpected perhaps ending in where it leaves them. Mm-hmm. I think that's a testament to what you're discussing. Is that sort of, it said what it needs to say. Is by the end of it, they've accepted wherever it is they're at. And they've accepted that things have changed and they're not going to go back to the way they were before, because that's real life. I mean, like you say, people don't... If you have a divorce, it's very unlikely things are going to go back to exactly the way that they were before. What we haven't mentioned, which we should bring up, is the stakes, which is the son. Yeah. They both love their son, and that's the goal, is they want to be able to have as much time with their son as possible.
I actually feel bad because we haven't really...
No, we haven't.
He is a pivotal part of this film.
He is. And that's the goal. That's sort of the stakes. And you understand both of their point of views when they say, but I want to be able to do this with my son. You go, well, of course you do. And you should be able to. And then that's where the conflict comes in with the lawyers, things going to as further than perhaps they should. And that's why I think it grips you so much, because you're going, why can't you just get along, for your son's sake? And I think that's probably what people would feel like if their parents were going through a divorce, unfortunately. And I think it captures that quite well. Mm-hmm. Sort of that feeling of, the kid in the back going, oh, please don't fight. Why are we doing this? Let's just get along. Because you go, stop arguing and just get along. Mm-hmm. It really makes you almost scream at the TV, like, behave yourselves, come on. Pull yourselves together. And
if you bring it back to, Matt, at the very start, you thought that Charlie's character won in the end, and there's that conversation they sort of have when they're talking about dividing assets. I guess you could say that it's probably a 60-40 split on how we feel who won. Maybe it's 70-30, maybe it's 55-45, and I guess it really depends on your perspective. Who won more? Do we really care who won more? Is the best interest should be with the child? Has the child won anything in the end of all this? Because that's sort of who they're doing all of this for, is the child. But
I think sort of just to touch back on my point about thinking that Charlie had won, is I think he's the one who developed the most out of the two of them. Okay. And therefore I think he walked away with more.
Okay. He definitely appreciated the marriage. No, he definitely used the marriage as a more as a part of his personality more than Nicole did.
Yeah.
Being married for him was a part of his identity, and it might have been for Nicole as well, but I think it was a more substantial part for Charlie, and there's more room to grow there as a character if that's the case.
Well, being Australia, we do have pies in the oven, of course. So maybe we should give this a rating and sum up.
I think that's a very good idea.
Out of pies?
Why not? We've got them in the
sand pies. We're on an island.
Sand pies.
Pies. How many sand pies? Matthew, you can start with this one.
I went into this film mainly for Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, and also Laura Dern, who's a good actress and one of my favourites, obviously from Jurassic Park. And
which we haven't mentioned, won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress.
Oh, did she? Yeah. Oh, yes. well deserved, because it's the first time I've really hated her, and which just is a testament to her performance.
I loved her in Jurassic Park.
Yeah. So I love this. I loved how, as we mentioned, it was so realistic and grounded, and then it was able to trick you into some of those really sort of almost absurd moments of dark comedy. I was absolutely on the edge of my seat for this, so I'm going to give it 5.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an easy 4 to me. It's not anything groundbreaking. I just think it was a really, really excellently done character drama, and it's something I'll probably go back to as well. But I'm gonna leave the 5 for something more substantial. I feel it's in the future at some point.
You reckon it's touched upon it, but not quite there yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
It ticked all the boxes. It was good about everything that it did, but it gave me a sense of it also annoyed me. As a story, I was sort of just like, is it so grounded, or it's trying to be so grounded that it's going, this is divorce and this is and like it's reality, but it was to the point where it didn't take me out of my own reality. It left me knowing that I was sitting on my couch in a house just like they probably do as well. I didn't get a sense of it taking me away and, you know, letting me relax for 2 hours. I was stressed for 2 hours. I didn't need that today, you know?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean don't see the film.
I think
an
it's worth
argument.
seeing. Oh, sorry, Steve.
I mean, there's an argument to say that because it made you stressed, maybe it was doing its job.
Maybe it did, and that is exactly right. Maybe it did exactly what it was supposed to do. I wouldn't call it a first date film.
Oh, no. Can you imagine that? Wow, Steve nearly choked on his drink.
Imagine that. That'd be great.
Would it?
Yeah.
I guess if you didn't like them all
Yeah,
that much.
absolutely.
We should go see Marriage Story.
Very terrible blind date.
You
Go on
know,
Netflix and chill. I've got a
right.
great movie.
more like Netflix and cry. I'm really torn because I want to give it, you know, for all those aspects. You say, okay, yeah, it's a 5 because it does all of that,
Yeah.
but it still annoyed me, and that makes me want to go give it a 3.
Okay.
But so I guess probably, you know, trying to put the two hemispheres of my brain together and say, okay, what do I go with? I guess it has to be a 4.
Oh, 13 out of 15. That's not too bad.
I reckon that's acceptable for a Netflix film.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap on episode 3.
That was a good episode.
Episode 3. Wow.
Wow,
We've made
3
it this
already.
far.
That was a deep episode, that was.
A little deeper than we needed. Maybe next week we can chill out a little bit with something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't forget to visit us on trailerisland.com.au. Find us wherever you find your podcasts. You've got, what was it, Google Podcasts, we've got the Apple Podcasts, the Spotify.
Yeah.
I'm surprised a lot of people have Spotify. I did not realise that many
I
people
think
had
it's
it.
quite accessible. Not that we're plugging Spotify all that much, but yeah, it's good.
Also a bunch of Apple subsidiaries as well. I
Yeah,
feel like
there's-
Overcast. And
Yeah, there's a lot that fall under that as well. So please check it out. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't ever miss an episode. You never want to miss Matt's voice. That's for
No,
sure.
I mean, who would want to miss this?
Silky.
Oh,
Silky.
yes.
And Steve, there is the Twitter as well.
Yeah, Island trailer.
I
Still
think I'm
hunting
still.
him down.
We're gonna find him. We're gonna find
We have
him.
his address. He's just never there when we call.
I've been tweeting at him as well. But it feels like I'm tweeting at myself.
Perfect. Wait, hang on. Okay. All right, I'll allow that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's a wrap on episode 3, and I've been your host, Alex, on the Trailer Island podcast.
I've been Matthew.
And I am Steve.
Lovely. We will see you next week for episode 4. Good night.